By 1747, Griffith sold part of his land to a man named Gideon Dudley, and with that, the name that would one day stain the land in legend took root. A place so haunted, you're not even allowed to visit? When I heard this story, I knew I had to tell you guys. So let's dive into it. Nestled deep in the woods of northwestern Connecticut lies the crumbling remains of a town that has been completely erased from maps and memory. No official roads lead to it, no signs welcome you in, and the moment you step foot past the tree line, you're trespassing, not just on private land, but onto something darker. Because this isn't just an abandoned village, this is Dudleytown, a place cursed by blood, shadowed by madness, and swallowed by the forest that never wanted it there to begin with. Once a humble colonial settlement, Dudleytown quickly earned a reputation for misfortune. Crops failed, livestock died, and the people, well, they either went insane or vanished. Some say it's because the land was cursed. Others believe something ancient still lurks in the trees, something that feeds on fear and never forgot what the settlers did when they carved into its soil. Even today, those who dare to sneak in report hearing whispers, flashing lights in the darkness, and a presence that follows you long after you leave. So why can't you visit? Because too many people came looking for answers and found something else. So this is the true story of Dudleytown, Connecticut. But to truly understand the legend, let's step back to the early 1740s, shall we? It was the early 1740s when a man named Thomas Griffith ventured into the remote hills of northwestern Connecticut, a place so densely wooded and shadowed that locals referred to it as the Mast Swamp, named for the towering white pines used to make masts for British ships. The land was wild, tangled, and unforgiving, but Griffith saw promise in it. He cleared trees, built a small homestead, and for a brief moment, it seemed like he would thrive. But something about the land, it just never seemed right. The shadows hung too long in the afternoons. The air was heavy, even in the winter. There were strange silences, unnatural lulls in birdsong. Locals would later say that Griffith was the first to bring the axe into the forest, and the first to disturb whatever had been sleeping there. By 1747, Griffith sold part of his land to a man named Gideon Dudley, and with that, the name that would one day stain the land in legend took root. Gideon was followed by other members of the Dudley family, Barzillai, Abiel, and Martin Dudley, the latter hailing from Massachusetts. Each carved out a life for themselves amid the forest and rock. Their arrival marked the quiet birth of a small, tight-knit settlement that would never appear on official maps, but would eventually be known as Dudleytown. They were soon joined by other pioneering families, the Tanners, Joneses, Pattersons, Dibbles, and Porters. Together, they built modest homes, barns, and winding stone walls, many of which still exist today, buried under moss and the roots of ancient trees. But this wasn't a place that welcomed growth. The terrain was steep and rocky, the soil poor and thin. Farming was laborious and often unrewarding. Crops struggled to survive. Fields, once cleared with sweat and blood, would reclaim themselves within seasons, choking new growth with vines and thorns. And the forest, it closed in, always watching, always waiting. From the very beginning, there were murmurs, oddities that made their way through the small community. Tools went missing, only to be found days later in impossible places. Livestock refused to graze near certain patches of land. Children would speak of tall shadows in the woods watching from behind the trees. One journal entry from a visiting clergyman in 1759 read, "There is a heaviness to this place. The trees do not sway, even when the wind howls elsewhere. The people are kind, but their eyes are tired, as if something is pressing down on them." But life went on, as it does. The settlers worked hard, bore children, buried their dead. They fought through brutal winters and short summers, and for a time, they endured. Yet, Unlike most colonial settlements that grew and thrived into villages and towns, Dudleytown never expanded. It never drew in more families. There were no schools, no churches, not even a town square. It remained a strange little pocket, cut off from the world and slowly folding in on itself. As if the land had made a decision. This is as much life as I'll allow. As years passed, the ground beneath Dudleytown grew heavier, the forest grew thicker, and the families, especially the Dudleys, began to suffer in ways too coincidental to ignore. But we'll get to that. For now, it's important to understand one thing. Dudleytown didn't spring from cursed soil. It was built stone by stone, dream by dream, by people who had no idea what they were stepping into. But the forest, it knew, and it was patient. One thing to note is that blood never washes clean when it's tied to a curse. Long before the first tree was felled in Dudleytown, before the first foundation stone was laid in the unforgiving soil of Connecticut's dark entry forest, the legend of the Dudley curse had already begun. On the other side of the ocean, in the cold, blood-soaked courts of Tudor England. Now, if you remember from my video on the Tower of London, you should recognize the name Dudley. And if you haven't watched that video, I'll link it for you down below. The tale begins with Edmund Dudley, a prominent advisor to King Henry XI, a man of wealth, ambition, and dangerous political influence. But power, as it often does, made him a target. In 1510, after Henry XI took the throne, Edmund was accused of treason and swiftly beheaded. His crime? Allegedly conspiring to overthrow the king. But the punishment did not end with his death. As the executioner's blade fell, it is said that a curse was spoken, not by Edmund himself, but by a shadowed figure in the crowd, a woman in black who had followed the Dudley bloodline for generations. She whispered, "Let every branch rot, let their roots twist. May madness follow their name like wolves to a scent." A curse born in the heart of England, soaked into the soil with his blood. What followed was a string of horror that would make even the skeptics tremble. John Dudley, Edmund's son, rose to power decades later, but he met a similar fate, tried for treason and executed. Guilford Dudley, John's son, was famously married to Lady Jane Grey, the 9 Days Queen. Both were executed in the Tower of London. 3 generations, 3 beheadings. Each time, the blade came down harder. Some say their deaths were just the workings of a turbulent monarchy. Others see a pattern. One soaked in royal blood, madness, and the chilling hand of something older than politics. Centuries later, when members of the Dudley family settled in the New World, in what would become Dudleytown, many claimed they were escaping not just British rule, but the curse itself, fleeing from their family's blackened legacy. But curses? They don't need passports. They don't obey oceans. And if this one curse had slept at all, it woke the moment the first Dudley set foot in that dark Connecticut valley. And just like in England, the spiral began. Residents of Dudleytown, many of them Dudleys by blood or marriage, began to fall in the mind. Madness swept through their homes like a fever. Men wandered into the forest and returned with hollow eyes, muttering about shapes in the trees. Children were born only to die weeks later. Women woke in the night with bruises in the shape of fingers around their necks. Whole families vanished without a trace. And always, it was the Dudleys who suffered first. Skeptics point out that there's no proven genealogical link between the Dudleys of Dudleytown and the executed nobleman of Tudor England, but history often writes with erasers, and in places like Dudleytown, the absence of evidence is never proof of safety, because what's more terrifying? A family tree choked by centuries of tragedy, or the idea that it doesn't matter if the curse is real, because people believed it was, and it destroyed them anyway? Whether by blood, by fear, or by something older than both, the curse came to Dudleytown. And it never left. So Dudleytown's history is marred by numerous tragedies and unexplained events that have fueled its reputation as a cursed and haunted location. While some of these accounts are documented, others have been passed down through local lore, contributing to the area's dark aura. One of the earliest recorded incidents in Dudleytown was the death of Gershon Hollister in 1792. It's said that Hollister died during a barn raising in the village, an event that some accounts suggest was accidental, while others imply foul play. The incident set a somber tone for the community's future. The village began to see several cases of mental instability and unexplained deaths among the residents. William Tanner, a neighbor of the Dudleys, reported seeing strange creatures emerging from the woods, leading to his eventual insanity. Similarly, Abiel Dudley was institutionalized due to mental illness. The Carter family faced a series of misfortunes. After moving to Binghamton, New York, they were attacked by Native Americans, resulting in the death of Mrs. Carter. The Brophy family experienced a string of calamities. After losing their livestock to disease and facing accusations of theft, their sons disappeared under mysterious circumstances. John Brophy's wife succumbed to tuberculosis, and following a devastating house fire, he wandered into the forest, never to be seen again. Residents also reported seeing sightings of strange demonic creatures lurking in the surrounding forest. Workers cutting timber spoke of sickly animals and unfamiliar beings at the edge of the village. These accounts contributed to the growing fear and unease among the villagers. In recent times, paranormal investigators and visitors have shared unsettling experiences in Dudleytown. Nicholas Robert Grossman, a Connecticut-based paranormal investigator, described an eerie silence in the area. Nothing, the absence of wildlife, sounds, and a sensation akin to being in a soundproof room. He categorized the location as a void, suggesting the presence of a vortex or portal. These cumulative accounts of tragedies, mental disturbances, appearances, and encounters with the unexplained have solidified Dudleytown's reputation as a place of mystery and fear. While some attribute these events to natural causes or coincidences, others believe there are manifestations of a lingering curse or paranormal presence. Now, Dudleytown wasn't just abandoned, it unraveled. Slowly, like a body succumbing to illness, the town began to rot from the inside out. And what makes its decline so haunting isn't just the failing of crops or crumbling homes, it's what the residents left behind, and what may have stayed. The soil in Dudleytown was never fertile. Even early settlers wrote in journals about crops that died and patches with no disease, no drought, just silence. As I mentioned earlier, the landscape was harsh, rocky, and hilly. Trees grew in tightly, blotting out much of the sunlight. Visitors often noted how strange it was that birds didn't sing. The forest was dense and unnatural. It seemed to consume rather than cradle the town. Local historians noted that even in the daylight, Dudleytown was dim and eerily still. Locals called it Dark Entry Forest for a reason. It's a forest that seems to swallow sound. No wind, no birds, no rustling leaves. Just the overwhelming sensation that you're being watched. Many towns fade away due to economics, industry collapse, or changes in population. But Dudleytown? It just decayed through death, disease, and madness. Abiel Dudley, remember him? We spoke about him earlier. Reportedly began talking to people no one else could see. His final days were spent in a makeshift cabin, where neighbors claimed to hear him screaming at voices in the dark. They described his howls as not of a man, but something possessed. After his death, his home was left to rot. When a local boy wandered inside years later, he emerged with bleeding scratches across his back. There was no one else inside. William Tanner, another early settler that I mentioned, reportedly began keeping a journal in which he documented creatures that whispered at the edge of the woods, tall and thin with mouths full of teeth. When his writings were found years later, the ink had gone red. Not faded red. And on the last page, just one sentence repeated over and over. The forest is hungry. As Dudleytown declined, the Brophy family's story became a local legend because it was just too much tragedy for one household. It began with a lightning strike that burned their barn to the ground. Then, a sudden illness swept through their cattle. After that, 2 of their sons vanished while out gathering firewood. No trace was ever found. Days later, Mrs. Brophy took her own life by drinking lye. And finally, in what can only be described as either madness or surrender, John Brophy walked into the forest and never returned. Search parties claimed the forest grew too thick too quickly, and that their compasses spun in circles while they searched. Locals began to whisper about the woods surrounding Dudleytown, how they never felt quite right. Even after the town was entirely abandoned, hikers and thrill seekers who ventured into the area reported feeling disoriented, nauseous, and most disturbingly watched. One woman who visited in the early 1900s before the area was closed off reported that her friend went pale and dropped to her knees the moment they crossed into the ruins. Her friend later said she saw something tall with no face standing between 2 trees. When they turned to leave, the path they had taken had vanished. They had to bushwhack their way out, and when they returned to their car, it was scratched with what appeared to be claw marks. And you know the place is haunted when good old Ed and Lorraine Warren take a visit. Ed and Lorraine visited Dudleytown in the 1970s. They called it demonically possessed. Lorraine reportedly refused to return after their first trip, saying she felt a crushing weight of despair, unlike anything she'd experienced before. She described the woods as being filled with souls that never left, and claimed that the land was not cursed by man, but claimed by something older, something inhuman. By the early 1900s, Dudleytown was a ghost of itself. Most homes had crumbled to stone foundations, overgrown with ivy and moss. The silence grew thicker. People stopped visiting. The last known residents fled without explanation, abandoning their land deeds and leaving their homes fully furnished, like they just ran out screaming. What remained are cellar holes, stone walls, and rumors, and perhaps something darker. Because to this day, hikers who sneak past the no trespassing signs into dark entry forest have told stories of black shadows darting between trees, of laughter echoing in the stillness, and of footsteps that follow you, but leave no prints. And if you stay too long, some say you won't find your way out. Because Dudleytown doesn't just let people go, it keeps them. Dudley's town reputation has persisted into the 21st century, drawing both paranormal investigators and law enforcement attention. While the area remains off limits to the public, unauthorized visits and subsequent reports have shed light on the ongoing allure and mystery of this abandoned settlement. Paranormal investigator Nicholas Robert Grossman has conducted extensive research into Dudleytown. In a 2019 interview, Grossman and his colleague Peter Sarow discussed their experiences in Dudleytown, asserting that the area is a hotspot for paranormal activity. They recounted instances of hearing disembodied voices and witnessing unexplained phenomena, emphasizing that such occurrences could happen even in broad daylight. In 1924, a group of philanthropists formed the Dark Entry Forest Association with the aim of reforesting the area and preserving its natural beauty. They planted thousands of trees and established the land as a private nature reserve. Despite their efforts to maintain the area for conservation purposes, Dudleytown's reputation as a haunted location attracted numerous trespassers and vandals, leading the association to close the area to the public. In May 2018, 2 individuals were arrested for unauthorized entry into the area. They were apprehended after being observed on security cameras set up by property owners. Such incidents highlight the challenges faced by law enforcement in keeping the curious and thrill seekers away from the site. In 2017, a police report detailed unusual observations by property owners, including sightings of individuals engaging in peculiar behavior, such as changing clothes in the open and allegedly carrying firearms. These reports underscore the heightened vigilance and concerns surrounding unauthorized access to Dudleytown. Dudleytown mystique has been further perpetuated by media coverage and public interest. The area has been featured in various articles and discussions, often highlighting its haunted reputation and the legends of curses associated with it. This attention has contributed to the ongoing fascination and unauthorized visits, despite clear warnings and legal restrictions. So even though today Dudleytown remains off limits to the public, the Dark Entry Forest Association continues to protect the land, and local authorities enforce strict no trespassing laws. Despite this, the legend of Dudleytown persists, drawing the curiosity of many. It's essential to respect the private property rights and the preservation efforts of the area. For those interested in learning more, numerous documentaries, articles, and books delve into the history and legends of Dudleytown. Dudleytown serves as a fascinating example of how history and legend can intertwine to create enduring mysteries. Whether one believes in the tales of curses and hauntings or views them as mere folklore, there's no denying the compelling allure of this abandoned Connecticut settlement. As with all such locations, it's crucial to approach stories with a discerning mind and to respect the efforts that keep history alive for future generations. So thank you for joining me on this exploration of Dudleytown's dark past. If you like this video, be sure to follow for more eerie tales and legends.